The planet simply cannot afford to channel a paltry 0.6% of renewable investment in Africa at a time when the continent is home to over 40% of the planet's best renewable energy resources. Our statistics on sustainability, efficiency, and green compliance are outstanding. I mentioned earlier that we can create energy access for all by 2030 while reducing total emissions related to energy generation by at least 80% and emissions per megawatt hour by well over 90% with only 30% investment. However, it entails a 40% higher upfront investment than the current policy pathway. If Africa is to be the green industrial powerhouse of the world, and there is no foreseeable alternative, much more investment has to be made available collectively by humanity. This position aligns very closely with the ongoing discussion in Bridgetown Initiative, which I am sure many of you are aware, whose principles, achievements, and aspirations we must applaud. A decision in line with the Bridgetown call for action to channel a greater proportion of global finance to emerging and frontier economies and link it closely with climate action would make necessary concessional capital available to de-risk and attract private investment. This is precisely the outcome that decades of economic distress and underdevelopment of the global South deserves and must have. Moreover, as the global financial reform movement considers debt restructuring, the sustainability of debt relief is a major shared concern. Many of the countries in debt distress benefited from debt relief according to the highly indebted poor countries in the 90s. It is clear, therefore, that debt relief did not automatically usher in significant economic growth. In fact, it didn't achieve much. To liberate economies from this vicious circle, positive growth that is sensitive to climate and biodiversity agenda is needed. This is growth that builds on all our assets. African countries possess inherent competitive potential to emerge as clean, green, global manufacturing hubs. And that's the unique position we have. Instead of all the games being played, all we need to do, we are telling the world, we have our assets, we are willing to have a win-win engagement. We have the largest green energy potential, resources. The world has no choice. We cannot continue the fossil fuel-fired industrialization. It has to change. All we are saying is we are coming with our assets, come with investment and technology, we meet halfway, and everybody wins. That's all we are saying. We are tired of complaining. We are tired of being victims. We want to be part of the solution. Don't consign Africa to the margins of problems and being victims and managing adaptation. We have better proposals that can get all of us out of the quagmire that we are all in. A critical growth opportunity that can be the starting point for our intentional efforts in pursuit of our aspiration is fiscal space arising from both debt restructuring and blended capital, combined with economic growth that increases tax revenues and positions African countries to invest more in adaptation and resilience. Once we have a win-win, once we are making money, once we are engaged in economic activity, we can take care of the adaptation. We can take care of resilience. Don't bring resilience into the equation to fool anybody that we are going to get anywhere with money for adaptation. You know, we are managing a problem. We want to be part of the solution. Don't consign us to managing a problem. I submit to you, in this esteemed assembly, my good friends, that by taking these measures with a degree of both urgency and resolve, Africa's leaders can energize our economies and inspire the people with a new vision centered on investment and growth, which is in harmony with our planet. In doing so, our generation will have discharged a tremendous historic developmental mandate while realizing our common global ambition to arrest and ultimately reverse climate change. We will also make it possible for our economies to meet the needs and fulfill the hopes of a young workforce, which grows at an annual rate of about 30 million young people in our continent, requiring us to generate millions of decent jobs every year. Your work, honorable members, therefore, is clearly cut out, and your assignment very well defined. By facilitating robust and continuous discourse on the broadest cross-section of Africa, this Parliament will simultaneously employ the federative transmission of ideas from discrete grassroots agencies to the global and continental, multilateral, and intergovernmental fora, and at the same time engage the devolutionary mechanisms of domesticating global standards and international norms. Although the theme of this session is the African continent at crossroads, our discussion has enlarged our field of deliberation to encapsulate possibilities that transcend our defining dilemma of past decades. For a while, Africa has struggled with an implied trade-off between economic growth and prosperity on one hand, and environmental sustainability on the other. We can now agree that given the transitional imperative, it is possible for Africa to execute clean, green industrialization that can enable the rest of the world attain the net zero target as well. We finally have the answer to the dilemma, and with it, our way out of the thematic crossroads. Simply, Africa is the answer. We don't have to be at the crossroads. If Africa is indeed the young green continent of the future and the locus of the next industrial revolution, Africa's solutions are no longer restricted to Africa's problems. They also address humanity's problems effectively, global problems effectively. So we can confidently say that African solutions can actually provide global solutions. Aspirations often come with a problem of implementation. The concept paper contains a statement that I approved unreservedly. A sound policy framework should begin with formulation and end with implementation. But worldwide policy development is frequently prioritized without regard for performance. our development partners tend to focus more on providing resources for policy development rather than implementing the policies. This situation has resulted in heaps of policy documents gathering clouds of dust on the shelves of government offices. As legislators, you are mandated not only to formulate law and policy, but also to rigorously oversee their implementation. To ensure that the African Union performs at the level of its aspirations, it will be necessary for you, as legislators, representatives, and overseers, to make sure that it empowers itself with sufficient capacity. Otherwise, African Solutions, Agenda 2063, the African Continental Free Trade Area, and the young, clean, green continent of the future will remain a mere pipe dream. I want to persuade you. The power you enjoy today is delegated to you. The authority you enjoy today is delegated to you by the people of our continent. And let me remind you that the authority that you wield comes with responsibility. And responsibility comes with accountability. Our Africa Union, we have to rethink the architecture, the governance structure of our Africa Union. This parliament must provide the accountability mechanisms to make sure that all the structures of the Africa Union ultimately are answerable to the people of this continent. It is completely against the principles of accountability to have an impotent parliament. A parliament that cannot approve the budget of our organization. A parliament that cannot hold to account the executives in our administration is not the kind of parliament the people of Africa envisaged, is not the kind of parliament our forefathers envisaged when constituting our union. Let me also say the following, that as nations, the whole reform agenda around the AU is a necessary imperative. It is not possible for us as states, as governments, to hold all the power and expect the African Union to function. We must be courageous enough, we must be bold enough to delegate some of the powers of our nations to the collective body of the African Union. That is what other progressive unions have done. It is not possible for us to continue to engage with the rest of the world the way we are doing. The budget of African Union, to a good extent, is funded by development partners. What does it say about our ability to make our own decisions? It is said, he who pays the piper calls the tune. As things stand today, and I say this with tremendous respect, the Africa Commission Chair, the Africa Union Commission Chair, does not have what it takes to prosecute the agenda for our continent. we still hold all the power as heads of state and expect the union to function. It cannot function. We have to donate some of the power to the collective authority of the union. I had occasion, let me explain to you something. I had occasion a few weeks ago to talk with the German Chancellor. And he was explaining to me how Germany has donated matters trade, matters investment to the European Union. And they have immensely benefited by working together as 27 governments, 475 million people. In our continent, we still want to keep all the powers in our little corners. How are we going to negotiate with EU as a country? How are you going to negotiate? And this is the candid conversation we must have. The Pan-African Parliament must operate at the same level as the European Parliament. If we have to engage with the European Union on a platform as equals, how does a country with 10, 20 million people engage with the European Union with 500 million people on equal footing? Is that a reality? We just must be honest to ourselves. The globe is acting in concert. We cannot afford not to act together. Good people, this is my request to you. And our organization must begin to internalize accountability. If you want to wield power, if you want to wield authority, you must be ready to be held to account. Otherwise, you have no business. And the organization to hold the African Union to account is this parliament. So what am I saying? For example, let me give you another example. We have been to US Africa. We have been to some other engagement with other countries. Now we have been invited for Russia-Africa Summit. We have made a decision, very respectfully as heads of state in Africa, that any engagement with other partners must be an engagement of equals. And for it to be meaningful, if we are going to meet the president of a country, we have organized ourselves that the Troika is going to represent Africa. The chair, the current chair, the past chair, the chair that is coming, and the heads of our regional economic commissions, about 6, 7 people. But what happens? Continuously, when others want to engage with us, they don't want to deal with the Troika. They want to invite 50 heads of state. So we go to a meeting, just explain to me what kind of outcome you expect where 50 heads of state are sitting. Everybody is asked to speak to 1.5 minutes. You speak to one for 1.5 minutes. What kind of engagement are you going to get? You're going to get nothing, right? The best that you get is photographs. That's it. Precisely. You get these photographs. They normally line us up somewhere, you know, crowd of 50 heads of state, you know, and that's all we come home with, you know, because there isn't time to engage any serious country that wants to engage with Africa, yeah, must respect first our architecture. If we have said we are going to be represented by the Troika, why are you inviting 50 people unless you want to sabotage the whole discussion? And if you can't respect our own rules, it is a sign of lack of goodwill. I mean, you must, so that when we engage, you know, if we have a smaller group of 5 people, then you can have a meaningful conversation. And we can have a meeting of equals. But here you are, you represent 200-300 million people. You have a guy here who represents 10 people. You have another guy who represents 10 million people. Then that conversation becomes, and some of the time, you know, the most unfortunate thing is that some of the people who invite us to these meetings tell us, if you don't come, there will be consequences. So all of us are forced to go to a meeting that has no meaningful outcome because of blackmail. This is not right, good people. You know, this is not okay, you know? So I have written to my brother who was here the other day that this time round, any other invitation, it must respect the rules of our continent. We have said any meaningful engagement, anybody who wants us to take them seriously, they must first respect our architecture. If they want a fruitful engagement, they should engage our continent in a manner that we can effectively represent our people and we can effectively discharge our mandate and articulate our issues, not in a crowd. We want to be effective. We want to engage, you know? So if you are one head of state and you want to engage all these people, surely, are you sincere, you know, in engaging in a crowd? Because some of these good people, they want to avoid any commitments, you know? They want to avoid any meaningful engagement. They just want a baraza and okay, pictures, and then we go. Dinner, and then, I mean, good people, we have food in our countries, at least. We can eat at home. The Africa Union reform agenda must therefore become a priority this session. And you must, members of parliament, you must interrogate and conduct the process to ensure that structurally the roles of the Bureau, Summit, committees, regional caucuses, secretariat, and commission are rationalized to give Africa a fit-for-purpose continental governing body worth its name. To do so, this Honorable Assembly must urgently review the funding arrangements to ensure that Africa Union budgets are financed primarily by members and secondarily by external partners. In turn, this will require a mechanism where Africa Union member states are up to date with their contributions with regard to all our commitments. As matters stand, our most core mandates depend on the goodwill of development partners. Just imagine, including critical peace and security matters, that our own Peace and Security Fund is funded by development partners more than is funded by us as heads of state and countries. Good people, this needs to change. Africa's solutions must look like solutions. And in principle, they ought to emanate from us. How do we say we are providing African solutions if it is funded by development partners? It's a fallacy. It means we have no capacity to provide Africa solutions if it is being funded by others. A case in point, we have a situation in Sudan. The generals in Sudan are bombing everything. They are bombing roads, they are bombing bridges, they are bombing hospitals, they are destroying airports, using military hardware bought by African money. Just imagine. We need to tell those generals to stop the nonsense. Yeah. Military capacity is for fighting criminals and terrorists. It is not for fighting children and women and destroying our own infrastructure. But as it is, we have no capacity to stop this nonsense in our own continent because our own peace and security fund is funded by others. We have a problem. But I'm telling you, we are going to correct this problem. It is us to do it. Let me also tell you that I think we're going to have a new, and we need your help. You know, we need your support. You must take up your role. You know, you must take up your role and make sure that our executive, the people running the Africa Union, are held to account. With this vision in mind, I sought and was privileged to receive the approval of the African Heads of State and Government Summit to have the honor of hosting the Africa Climate Summit in Nairobi this year in September. This will be a major gathering of African and global leaders to deliberate and consolidate a clear African position and clear African voice as we project our agenda in the global stock take engagements and the build-up to COP28. The summit also provides an opportunity to highlight and forge consensus on the modalities of unlocking Africa's vast potential to positively impact the climate agenda and rally the world to tap into the numerous opportunities that Africa presents towards global net zero. This will not be another morning summit where we are mourning about our situation. We are going to boldly tell the world we will contribute positively to a solution, and we have what it takes. I invite you all to Nairobi to join us at that summit and to take part in that broader journey and vision. For Africa to hold meaningful discussions with global partners, I have told you, Africa heads of state and governments have resolved that partnership summits by external parties shall be reviewed with a view to providing an effective framework for African Union partnerships. And we are going to work together in that manner. Another proposition I want to make to you is the United Nations. This is an important forum for transacting global affairs in diplomacy, peace, security, and trade, among others. But Africa, a continent of 1.2 billion people and a GDP of close to $2 trillion, finds itself disadvantaged by the current configuration of the UN Security Council, a configuration that was established 80 years ago, before the Second World War. But the world has since changed tremendously, we all know. Countries that had not become self-determining have since attained independence and are making a huge contribution to their people, continents, and the world. It is therefore time to reform the UN Security Council and change it from an exclusive club of 5 permanent members to a more representative global council that works for the interests of the whole world. We have said Africa must have, at the minimum, 2 permanent seats at the Security Council. And by the way, we are being very modest. Yeah, we are being very modest because we are understanding. We must therefore work together to make our continent prosperous, for that is what it deserves, and our people now and generations to come, and improve our relations with global business and global investments. One final thing that I want to, I know many of you have talked about Paris. Yes, we will be going to Paris because we want to occupy every space. We are going to be consistent. We are going to be coherent. We are going to be audible until there is no place to hide. Yeah? Until the conferences are stopped. Otherwise, we will make them noisy, we will make them messy, and there will be consequences. If we are not heard, we are refusing to stay on the margins anymore. Yeah? We want to be at the table. Because we are told the risk of not being at the table is that you could be in the menu. Do you understand? So we are going to occupy every space. And we have been gentlemen for far too long. We are now going to appropriate our place because we have a contribution to make. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for listening to me. I don't take it for granted. And God bless you.
Thank you. What do we want? Climate justice. 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 When do we want it? Now. When do we want it? Now. When do we want it? Now. Thank you. I have nothing to say. I have nothing to say. I have nothing to say. Hey! Hey, 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 hey. Your Excellency, Your Excellency, I am standing here saying, what can I say? Nothing but to just thank you, nothing more. Just thank you. Hey. Yeah. At one point, I could see 80% seated and wondering, looking at you like this, wondering whether this is coming from a president of this continent. People have always wanted to hear what you say, but they don't hear it. You know, you spoke as if you were this side, not this side.
Look. You have propelled Africa to another higher level. I tell you.
We now have gained confidence in our leadership on this continent. We really have confidence. We now have hope. And those that are aspiring, because this parliament has produced, as we said yesterday, a number of heads of state from this parliament. The current president of Seychelles was here 2 years ago. The current president of Namibia was a member of this parliament. Former President Mahama of Ghana was a member of this parliament.